All right, so it starts pretty run-of-the-mill. Most of the sequence is very familiar in many ways. So we start with a half butterfly, and we'll do 3-minute holds today. So one of the things that's not unique to this sequence, but is not common in my sequences, is we will do 3 postures and then rest. So very often we're doing 2 postures, rest, 2 postures, rest, 2 postures, rest. You could rest after every single posture. You could rest once at the end of the class. There's no rule for this. But in general, I like 2 postures, rest. That way, if you're doing one side, you can do the other side, and then you take a little rest. With yoga classes being an hour, honestly, if we're resting after every single posture, it might take too much time, or the rest might be really short, right? Because I'm like, oh, well, I have this many postures. We can only rest for, 15 seconds or 30 seconds before we have to move on. Or I end up doing less postures. And a lot of my sequences were pretty much at the minimum. We're at the minimum that we could do where we actually get something meaningful done, in my opinion, okay? As usual, feel free to use support. So you can have blocks underneath your forearms. You could have a block on your forehead. You could rest your torso on a bolster. And as usual, we are looking for a stretch in the hamstring. I'm actually feeling it in my back today. Not sure why. Ideally, that's not, well, I won't say that. It's okay to feel it in your back. It's not really what we're going for. But if you have issues with your back, as I do currently, then you might feel it back there. Now, as I've shared with everybody, and I share this information to try and educate, I am working on healing my back. I've done it before, and it is getting better in general, but it is a process. So it's not a straight line as we tend to like in the West, right? We like, oh, I'm going to go to the doctor. They're going to give me a pill or surgery, and then I'm going to be better. That isn't how we tend to heal naturally. It very often is like a zigzag. You're doing certain things, you heal to an extent, and then you might have to change what you're doing or try different things. And it's all about coaxing the body to heal itself, because in general, the body has the ability to do that. I think we all know this from when we're young, right? There are many things children can do and young people can do that would damage or injure someone's, or even injures them, but they just seem to bounce back and heal. Let's switch sides. So I was talking with a student before class the other day, and this particular student had some injuries that he had gotten that weren't healing. And I asked him, somewhat jokingly, but I'm like, how old are you? Because his wife was saying, well, it's weird that he hasn't just healed yet. And unfortunately, this tends to be many people's experience. When you're young, it seems like you just abuse your body, do whatever you want, hurt yourself, and you just magically heal. In general, from the yogic or the Taoist perspective, that's because when you're very young, there's just so much life force in your body. You're overflowing with it. If you look at little children, right, they run around. They don't walk anywhere. They run everywhere. They just are so full of energy and pep. So they're just overflowing with it. So they damage themselves. They hurt themselves, 9 times out of 10 or more, they just simply heal. As we get a little older, we might find, A, that we have injuries that don't seem to just heal on their own. And then B, you can even have injuries that seem to show up out of nowhere. In other words, you didn't do anything. You just wake up one day and your hip hurts or your back hurts. I'd say probably those are 2 of the most common areas. Knees, ankles can also be areas. Necks, shoulders, those types of areas are often common areas where people might have problems. I also know some people who have trouble with their elbow. So again, having done this for a long time, having talked with many people, I'd say this is probably more common than not past a certain age. Most people simply take this as a given, and they take it as there's nothing I can do about it except get a surgery, a hip replacement, take ibuprofen or Tylenol or aspirin to try and dull the pain. That's the way the sort of Western perspective is. It's an inevitable part of aging. You're just going to have to deal with it. That could be true. I don't know, honestly. But the way I'm approaching it is using myself as the guinea pig and using these ancient teachings as my guide. Ancient teachings and also modern findings, because there's a lot of science coming out about how to slow and even reverse the aging process. So if I'm biologically 20, then I should heal like a 20-year-old, right? Which again is going to be much better than somebody who's 70, let's say. Because again, a 20-year-old will probably have much more life force in their body, so they would naturally heal much more quickly. All right, so again, this is where we get a little bit off the beaten path, nothing too wild, but we do a third posture. And what's different about this sequence is usually I would relate the first two postures to the next posture. But for me, I don't need to do that. I can do pretty much any yin posture after another yin posture. I don't need to warm up. I don't need to open up certain parts of the body, but other people do. Now, this isn't too far of a stretch. And what I think my thought process was when doing this was to try and get as much as I could in within a limited amount of time. So I was choosing certain postures to get in certain benefits. And I wanted to work both the hips and the spine. So that's one of the beautiful things about this sequence, is it's going to be hips and spine. So now we're targeting the inside of the thigh here. And again, as we come forward and down, it stretches the back. Probably you would feel your back a little more than in the half butterfly. You'd feel it a little more here. So postures is one way that we can stimulate the body to heal itself. The postures create what's called a hermetic stress. And generally speaking, the hermetic stress stimulates the life force in the body to do something, to heal itself. It's almost like a reminder to parts of your body that might be damaged or injured that they should go ahead and heal. I'll share with you an example that my teacher who taught me yin shared in one of his DVDs. So there's a surgery that's done for the meniscus. The meniscus is on the inside of your knee here. And it's not uncommon for people to tear that doing various things. They tear the meniscus and then it just creates a lot of pain. It's not like they can't do certain things. If it's not like really bad, they can still do everything. It just hurts. It hurts a lot. For whatever reason, the meniscus just isn't healing itself. So the surgery or the procedure, the intervention is to open up the knee and just score the meniscus. So scoring, I don't know if you've ever done pottery class, but when you try and join two pieces of pottery together, you usually score it. You create little X's or a check mark on one side and the other side, and then that helps to create a surface that will adhere better, right? A smooth surface, it's hard to get two smooth surfaces to bind together, but two rough surfaces are a lot more likely to bind. So anyway, the surgeon goes in there and with a scalpel just scores, very gently scores the meniscus, cuts it, damages it very slightly. It's already damaged, but they just damage it a little bit more. Then they sew you back up. And what happens is if the surgery works, the meniscus heals completely. All right, let's unwind from that. We'll come back onto our back. So what's going on there? doesn't really make sense. Like, if the body had the ability to heal itself all along, why didn't it? Why did it need someone to go in there and essentially damage the area that was damaged more? And then the body said, oh yeah, we need to fix this. Right? That's sort of what it's like. It's almost like the surgeon went in there and said, hey, you need to fix this area. There's something wrong here. Fix it. And then it got fixed. So for whatever reason, the body is this way. I can't explain it. I don't know why it is. I don't know that anybody knows. But this is an observable phenomenon that just resting the body or leaving the body as it is very often leaves an untapped potential for the body to heal there. So we can tap into that potential. Again, in this instance, it's through surgery. All right, let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And then we will do the banana next. So moving your hips to the right edge of the mat, move your legs to the left, move your arms, head, neck, shoulders to the left. And now we're targeting here, the side of the waist, okay? So keep this hip down. Yesterday, somebody was doing that, rolling their hip up. I've mentioned it before, very common mistake, but we don't want to do that. That won't add to the posture. So the example I gave was one where a surgical intervention was used to stimulate the life force of the body to heal itself, which apparently it has the potential to do. Otherwise, the surgery wouldn't work, right? The doctor's not sewing the meniscus up. The doctor's actually damaging the meniscus further, very slightly, but enough for the body to recognize, oh, we need to do something about this, okay? Now I use this example because this is the thinking behind so much of the yogic and Taoist approach to healing, the philosophy behind it. So in this country, very often people think of yoga as a healing modality because people do experience healing doing yoga. But in India, yoga is actually separated from kind of health and healing to a degree. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but basically yoga is more or less considered a spiritual discipline, and something called Ayurveda is considered health and healing. Now, what you need to know is both yoga and Ayurveda, they both use postures, they both use meditation, they both use visualization, they both use meditation. So there's a lot of overlap, and that's why it's easy to get this confusion where people are like, oh, I did this yoga posture and it healed this or that. Or sometimes yoga teachers will, talk about yoga therapy and things like that. So it is what it is. That's the modern, take that we have on yoga. Most people often think of yoga as a healing modality before they think of it as a spiritual modality. And I think a lot of that has to do with marketing in the United States, because a lot of people, if they think about spirituality in this country, either A, they're like, I'm not spiritual, or I'm not religious, I don't have any affiliation there, or they identify as Christian. And so they don't want to feel like there's some kind of a spiritual aspect to what they're doing. This is only some Christians, because I have many Christians who are devout Christians and they're students of mine. And what they report is that what I teach them actually helps them understand their own faith and deepen their own faith. So that to me is a compliment, and that's exactly what I would like. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides here. So I do want to be very clear, nothing I teach is about religion or having to give up your beliefs, or your religion or your spiritual foundation. The way I view yoga, and the reason I'm a yoga teacher, is for me, the ancient yogis that developed the system, they just did a very good job of breaking down the practices and the theories behind human spirituality. And so what we find is different groups of people at different times are able to access the spiritual dimension of their consciousness through different metaphors, through different images, through different rituals. And there's nothing wrong with that. So a modern American who grew up in a Christian household, she might find that going, to take communion or going to church and singing in the choir or whatever, that allows her to experience a sense of connectedness and wholeness and peacefulness and joy that she just doesn't experience otherwise. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But everything that you do in church is, from a yogic perspective, considered a yoga practice. So again, that's why I consider myself a yoga teacher, because Christians might look at things that yogis do and be like, what are they doing? That's not spiritual. That has nothing to do with spirituality. That has nothing to do with God. Christianity can't explain everything that yogis are doing. The only way they explain it oftentimes is saying, well, that's not spiritual, right? I don't understand that, and so that can't be spiritual. And yet we have people around the world, people who are Christians, people who are Americans, who experience what we do in yoga as spiritual. It helps them access their spiritual dimension. So again, in order to do that, you kind of have to discount a lot of people's testimony, right? You just have to say, well, they don't know what they're talking about, right? If someone comes on a retreat with me and we do a lot of breathing techniques and stretching and meditation, and somebody has a spiritual experience, but I don't want to believe any of that is spiritual, then I just have to say, well, you don't know what you're talking about, right? I just discount or gaslight them. I just basically say, well, you don't know what spirituality is, or the devil's got you, or whatever it might be, right? We have to just basically explain away their experience. But if we allow that there are many ways of accessing our spiritual dimension as human beings, then we can recognize, well, this person experiences it at church, this person experiences it in yoga class, this person experiences it going to the mosque, this person experiences it going to temple, another person might experience it walking in nature, whatever it might be. All right, let's come on out of that. And then the easiest transition is just to roll onto your belly and prop yourself up on the elbows for Sphinx. Okay, so this is a back bend, and you can go a little deeper by straightening your arms, which I think I'm going to do today. We call that seal. So legs together, legs apart, head held up, drop forward, or drop back. Okay, we just want a little bit of compression in our back there. So in Ayurveda, which is it's sometimes called the sister science of yoga, because again, it's not yoga. Its concern is more about health, longevity, wellness, things like that. So in Ayurveda, a common principle that's used is to use something that is actually poisonous, dangerous, when used in a large enough dose. And what they do is they will actually dilute it. They will bring it down to a very, very small amount. And then they would use that in a medicine of some sort. And again, this might sound odd. It might sound dangerous. Oh, we're using something that's harmful, but it's supposed to heal. And if you think about it, it's sort of the same principle of hermetic stress that is gaining a lot of popularity today among doctors and surgeons and people who do research, because we're finding this is really helpful. So the idea, the principle, I've spoken about it before, but just as a reminder, the idea is that something that is stressful in the short term in the right amount, can actually stimulate the body to be healthier in the long term. So simple examples are cold plunges, hot saunas, exercise, right? Working a muscle to fatigue creates micro tears in the muscle, and that causes the muscle to rebuild healthier and stronger than it was before. So this ancient idea of using something that's actually slightly poisonous in the right amount to cause the body to heal itself is not such a strange idea anymore. And if you think of something like, there are other things that in medicine are the same way, things that are slightly harmful, but actually lead to a longer term healing. If you think of surgery, you're getting cut open, you have wounds, you have things that you need to heal from. But again, the longer term goal of a surgery, of that intervention, is to create a longer term, greater sense of health. Whether or not that actually happens or not is a different story, but that is the intention. So again, it's not as foreign a concept as we might at first believe. All right, let's roll back onto our back and we'll just rebound for a few moments. All right, let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And then we hinge up to seated. And then from there, we transition to a tabletop. Okay, so tabletop. And we'll do a little bit of the bear here. So just moving around. So again, my back is kind of an interesting place. Certain things, certain movements that used to be very painful aren't so much anymore, but there is still some sensitivity there. But overall, does seem to be getting better. And my goal, my long-term goal, and I have no idea how long it will take, is to be completely pain-free. And I fully believe that I'll get there. All right, let's tuck those toes, work things back and forth. So again, a lot of that journey comes down to trial and error. So trying certain things, and then again, allowing the body that process of gradually healing itself and doing what it does naturally, which is its natural state is homeostasis, which we would call health. Okay, so let's bring our right knee forward toward the right wrist. The hips are down and back, and this is called the sleeping swan. So again, contrary to what might be popular belief, that as we age, we have no choice but to just allow the body to kind of fall apart. Again, there's actually some modern research coming out that is saying, well, that doesn't necessarily have to be true. And part of this is just aging itself. So again, if we think age is this linear thing that we are powerless to stop, then perhaps it does make sense. Perhaps if we are biologically aged 70, then perhaps there are certain conditions or certain things that will be very difficult for us to prevent those things. One of the greatest predictors of illness and death is just your biological age. So I have to emphasize biological, because most of us don't make that distinction. We just assume age is age, that's it. You're 49, that's it. You're 49, that means your organs are doing this, your blood looks like that, you are prone to these conditions, you know, if you get COVID, XYZ. But what we're learning is you can have two people and they're both 80, and one of them might actually biologically be closer to 60 or even 50. The other person might actually biologically be closer to 110. So that's biological age, which is separate from chronological age. Chronological age, you're right, you can't do anything about it. And maybe at some point we'll get away from caring about chronological age, right? A lot of things in our culture are based on chronological age. But what if you could test somebody who is about to get their driver's license or whatnot, and you find that mentally or emotionally they're like a 9-year-old, right? Technically they're 18, but inside they're like a 9-year-old. Well, maybe they shouldn't be driving an automobile. You know, I don't know. That's just an example. And then same with our physical health, right? We can look at somebody and we look at their driver's license and it says they are XYZ age, and we assume certain things about them because of that, right? Oh, you're 60, that means da-da-da-da-da. But maybe it doesn't mean that, biologically speaking. That person might, their internal organs, the health, I think we can now age the organs individually, right? So your heart might be one age, your liver might be another age, your lungs might be a different age. Let's switch sides. So for me, this is a fascinating subject because, like most people, as you begin to age, your body and your experience does change. Usually for many people, this happens in their 40s somewhere. If you're not taking care of yourself, it can happen a lot sooner. And again, if it happens sooner, one of the things you might begin to, one of the ways you can think about it is you're actually aging quicker. So even though you might be in your mid-30s, if you're starting to experience a lot of health problems, biologically, parts of your body at least might actually be in their 40s, right? If you've done a lot of drugs or a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, you've been hard on your body, then you might have actually accelerated the age of those organs. Again, no judgment. You know, you do you. You live your life. I'm not saying those are bad choices or things that you shouldn't do. Again, eating junk food, right? It tastes really good. It's designed to be that way. Junk food, what we call junk food, is in a laboratory chemically designed to be addictive. So again, we have to understand these things. It's not about judging anybody for poor choices or whatever. It is, though, hopefully about educating ourselves enough to make wise choices. And again, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, oftentimes those choices are not the fun, easy, comfortable choices. They are the choices that we'd rather not make in the short term, right? A bag of Doritos oftentimes sounds a lot better than eating something like sauerkraut. And I've made those choices in the past, right? I've chosen the bag of Doritos over the sauerkraut in the past. But these days, those choices tend to be less and less for me. I'm choosing more and more to fuel my body with things that I know to be healthy for it. So what's maybe most interesting about this discussion about chronological versus biological age is what we're starting to discover from certain studies. And again, all of this is science. This isn't conjecture. This isn't my opinion. What we're starting to learn from certain studies is that age can be reversed. Okay, so somebody who chronologically is in their 40s, but biologically maybe is in their 60s, by making dietary, lifestyle changes, they can actually bring themselves back to their chronological age, and they can maybe even grow younger, as strange as that sounds. All right, let's come on out of that. Now here's one of those weird transitions that this is something that I would do for me, but I might not choose to teach the public, but I am. So again, there's nothing unsafe or dangerous about it. It's just kind of an awkward, maybe challenging transition for some people. So saddle pose, okay, this can be some people's nemesis, even though it's such a therapeutic posture. So let's go over the options. Toes pointing back or toes pointing out to the side. You can pad the foot and ankle as much as it needs. Okay, so putting blankets or towels or padding underneath, make sure the ankle and the foot is comfortable, okay? Next are the knees. So knees can be together, and in yoga class, teachers might have told you to do that. It's not important here. So knees can be very far apart, and generally the wider the knees are, the less strain there is on the knees. So please consider that. Also, sitting up higher reduces flexion at the knee joint, right? The higher you go, the less flexion there is at the knee joint, and so that can relieve the knee as well. Point being, we don't really want strain on the ankle or the knee. We want to feel it first here. So if you feel it there, you're just going to stay there, let the quads stretch. However, I don't feel anything in the front of my thighs, nothing. So I begin lowering back to my hands, elbows onto a bolster like a big pillow, crown of the head, or all the way back onto my back. Now, once I'm here, I'm actually feeling it more in my back than I do in the front of my thighs. And that's because my particular physique, I don't hold a lot of tension in the front of my thighs, generally speaking. It's just probably the way my body was put together. There are other muscles of mine that might hold tension, whereas just the front of my thighs, not so much, okay? So again, stretching here and a little bit of compression in the back, that's generally what we want to feel. I don't want to feel intense sensations in my ankle or my knee, okay? We're trying to minimize the stress there, and we're trying to let the stress go into the front of the hips, the front of the thighs, and the low back, all right? And this is called the full saddle. Again, a little bit of an abrupt transition. For somebody like brand new to yin, that might feel like it's a lot. Even for someone who's practiced for a while, I usually will try and warm you up to a posture like this. We were doing something very different, and now we're doing this. Interestingly, biomechanically, it does make a certain amount of sense because the sleeping swan externally rotates the femur, the thigh bone. The saddle does the opposite. So even though I rarely teach these postures back to back like I am today, they're actually very much kind of a yin-yang to one another in terms of anatomical movements. And in yoga, sometimes movements are sequenced intentionally in that way. There's this idea, it's called pratapana in yoga, which is balance, right? So if I do something in one direction, I want to do it in the opposite direction. If I do a forward fold, I want to do a back bend. Now, I don't think that's the only way to sequence, or that's not your only concern when sequencing, but it is something that you can consider. And from that perspective, this combination actually makes a lot of sense, okay? You have less than 30 seconds left here. All right, let's unwind from that. Come back onto our back. All right, let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out a bit. And our last set starts with the twisted roots. So the right knee over the left, and then the knees down to the left. As always, experiment with leg, arm, and head position to maximize the benefit. Okay? So I mentioned at the beginning that one of my intentions is to completely heal my back and be completely pain-free. You might ask, well, why do I think that I can do this? Or why do I think this is possible? Do I really have any evidence? The answer is yes, I do. I've had problems with both of my hips at various points, similar, where it's like it's this pain that just won't go away. And I don't even know where it came from. Just one day I woke up and there was a pain there. And it seemed like no matter what I tried to do for a long time, it didn't heal. And I would try many things, acupuncture, therapeutic massage, chiropractic. But after just continually hammering away at it, yoga postures, right? Like yin yoga, I would use it. After enough time, it eventually healed itself. Now, it wasn't instant, it wasn't overnight, and it wasn't one therapy, right? It was a combination of therapies, working on my own, doing yin postures, again, trying to stimulate that part of the body to heal itself. And then a combination of also going to professionals. Now, you'll notice that one professional I didn't go to see is a doctor. And that is intentional. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to your doctor. The doctor can do, one of the most valuable things a doctor can do for you is give you a diagnostic. So they can take tests, they can do scans, and they can tell you whether or not they think there's damage there. Now, I'm again going to give you a word of warning. Just because a doctor says something, that does not mean it's absolutely true. So I've personally known people who've gotten misdiagnosed. It happens all the time. That's why doctors have so much insurance, because people tend to take their word as though it's the final word. It's the word of God. That's it. Doctor said this, that means it's true. So I would caution you to taking that attitude. The doctor may say, hey, you got this, you'll never heal, you need surgery. You don't necessarily have to take that as the final word, okay? You can, but you can get a second opinion. You can explore other options. That's always your choice, okay? So it is a choice that you make. And I just want everyone to understand that. We do have another choice than just simply taking what one doctor says as truth. All right, let's go ahead and do the other side. Now, again, I have a lot of respect for doctors. I've got friends and students who are surgeons and nurses and doctors, and a lot of people I respect and love are in that industry. So I am not trying to put down modern medicine or doctors or saying you shouldn't believe them. But like anybody, and me too, right? You don't want to take everything that's said as just, oh, that's the truth and that's the end of the story. I might have a different opinion than another yoga teacher. Okay, so you ask me a question, I might give you one answer, and then it may not work for you for whatever reason. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm flat out wrong. My answer might work for many people. In fact, it might work for most people. It just may not work for you. And then you get an answer from another yoga teacher and immediately problem solved. Okay, so this isn't about good or bad or right or wrong or evil people versus good people. It's just about reality. It's just the reality that we live in. So no one's always right, and we are different. So what is right for one person might not be right for someone else. And if you notice, that's a lot of how I try and teach. I don't try and teach one size fits all. So hopefully what you're getting from what I teach is that yeah, I might give you one answer to something, but that might not work for you. So feel free to explore other options, other answers. Find something that actually works. But this extends beyond just my teaching. This goes to any expert in any field, including doctors, right? Physical therapists, people who seem to have a lot more authority than a yoga teacher. What I would say is it doesn't matter what amount of authority someone has, they're still human. They still might make a mistake. They still might misdiagnose. Or they might be right on the money, except it just doesn't work for you, right? For whatever reason. So again, going to the doctor can be very good for diagnostics. What's going on with me? However, the solutions that doctors have are limited, generally to drugs or surgery. Sometimes doctors will send you to a physical therapist. Unfortunately, physical therapy, if you get a good one, it's a game changer. But if you get one that isn't so good, it's often not much help. They're just trying to collect insurance money. So they give you some standard, they're like, what hurts? Oh, my back hurts. Okay, do these exercises every day. And I'm not saying that they might not help, but the physical therapists and the therapists in general that I've worked with who've been truly helpful don't have that kind of attitude. They ask more questions, they spend more time with you, they follow up, and usually you need things to be tweaked to be fully effective, okay? All right, we'll come back to center. We've got one more posture. So true to form, this sequence has 3 poses per set. And now we do the caterpillar. Okay, so we're coming just forward and down. Again, kind of an unusual way for us to finish a class. Usually we're often finishing with some kind of a twist. Less often with a back bend. And I can't even think of another sequence that I've taught in this format where we're doing a forward fold as the end. However, in traditional yoga, pretty common, actually. Forward folds are considered very good for preparation for meditation, and traditionally, yoga postures were considered preparation for meditation. So not uncommon for that to be one of the last or the last posture. So again, something different. I have my reasons for not doing that. Part of it is that almost never is someone actually going and meditating at the end of one of my classes. I'm not saying never, but almost never. Usually I'm in a yoga studio, and what people do at the end of class is they actually get up and get in their car and drive away. So I don't know that we necessarily want them to be in a meditative state. We kind of want them alert, right? They're behind the wheel. So it's one reason. There are other reasons as well, but rest assured, pretty much everything I do is consciously chosen, and it comes from years of training and experience. It's not just random. But as I said, it's nice to change things up. So today we are doing something that could be considered a little more traditional in terms of yoga sequencing, how we finish the class, okay? So this is pretty much going to target the spine there again, just giving a gentle stretch to the back there. So again, I've healed my hip, I've healed my shoulder. My left shoulder was giving me a lot of trouble. For a while, my left side was really kind of messed up. Shoulder, hip, and I've pretty much completely healed those injuries over time. The shoulder, a lot of it was hanging, just what's called a dead hang that helped to heal that shoulder. And the hip, again, I did many things, probably for over a year, maybe even several years, and eventually it healed. If you go back and watch some of the older videos that I've recorded, you can actually hear me talking about the hip. So it wasn't like ancient history. It was maybe within the last 2 years or so that I was able to heal my hip. And I actually recently, not too long ago, within the last few years, had healed my back. It was giving me problem and then I healed it completely, and then it went out again for whatever reason. So this is the reason why I have a lot of faith in that I will be able to heal it eventually. Now I'll just mention here, healing it can be not only what I do, but it may also be partly what I stop doing. So there can be things that we are doing that are actually causing the trouble in the body. So certain habits I have about how I sit or how I spend my day, these can actually create problems. So I've been starting to do resistance training, and I would see my massage therapist, and I would just be in so much pain and everything would be really tight. And he gave me the advice, just stop everything for a week and see what happens. And sure enough, the minute I stopped, all the pain and discomfort went away. So it's not that I've completely stopped, but I've scaled back. I was doing too much of something that ultimately is good for me. And again, this brings us back to the point of dosing. How much of something am I doing? How quickly? How often? These are things that we really need to consider. If yoga claims to have all these benefits and I'm not getting any of those benefits, maybe I'm not doing enough yoga. The dosing isn't enough, right? On the other hand, if I'm having lots of side effects from doing yoga or resistance training or something else, maybe I'm overdoing it. Now that can change because our body can change, right? We can acclimate. So the right resistance training at one stage in your development will be different from one that you do later when you're stronger, right? What's appropriate at one point may no longer be appropriate at another point. So these are just things to keep in mind. All right, everybody. So you can give your legs a little squeeze, shake it out. You can take the next few minutes to rest if you like. We're about 5 minutes early ahead of schedule. So if you don't have to rush back to work, you can take a little bit of time to relax. But like I said, we usually relax between sets in this class, so it's less essential. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm happy to talk with you about anything of concern related with what we do here. Otherwise, I hope to see you on Monday for the flow class, the active class, which works and stresses the body in a different way than this class. All right, till next time, thanks again, and I'll see you.